Okay, we are so honored, Selene Yeager, to have you back on our podcast. I was actually blown away when I was preparing for our meeting today, just like how time has flown.
I
And
know.
you were with us in episode, I think, 93, which was over 2 years ago. So much has changed. And so I had a moment of like, well, holy moly, that was, yeah, when and what all has transpired. But I just want to thank you for joining us again. A little bit different conversation than when we first met on
It's
the
always a pleasure.
podcast.
Always happy to talk to you.
Thank you. Well, I'd love to just catch up a little bit on you because when we met in that episode 93 back in 2023, I think you were training for a half Ironman, like you had kind of dabbled back into triathlon racing. I think you've done like an ultra running race and some other things. Updating us on your athlete side before we get into some other conversation.
Well, that was really fun. I went back into triathlon after I hadn't done one since my Ironman Kona in 2008. It was a lot. It was
Wow.
a bit of a sabbatical. I went into mountain bike racing full steam after that, right? For many years in gravel racing. So I had just put it
Yeah.
down. And then I saw that Ironman was doing that 70.3 in Happy Valley. And that's where I went to school. I went to Penn State, and it looked really, really fun. It was a point-to-point course. You got to finish in Beaver Stadium. How could I not? Right.
Yeah.
So it was fun. It was fun to train again. It was fun to go through that process. I enjoyed the bike course was really fun, very hilly. I enjoyed it. The run was not so fun. It was quite hot, and it was a run through campus, like 2 loops, so just twisty and turny and punchy, and I was like, I'm kind of over this, but it was it was fun. I'm glad I did it, but I just don't have I would probably do another short sprint. Like I really enjoy that process, but I don't have the desire to train that much as a
Mhm.
full-time job. If I lived closer to a lake, maybe. I don't like I like open water swimming, but not so much the pool swimming. There's just things that, just don't speak to me the same way. So
Yeah.
I'm glad I did it. I don't think I would do another half at this point, but I did do that 30K, which actually ended up being about 20 miles or so, trail race in Patagonia, Arizona.
That's right.
And that
Nice.
was the Daydreamer. And I
Okay.
really enjoyed that. That was really fun. We ran most of it on the Arizona Trail. Yeah, it was really fun. I enjoyed that
Yay.
quite a bit.
Well, and I think cycling is still your true
It is.
calling, right?
Bike packing and all of that kind
Yeah.
of stuff,
Yeah.
big gravel events. That's where I am most at home. But I like having running as my secondary sport, especially we were talking before I hit record. It's starting to get cold here. And after decades of having to ride my bike in the cold and train through the winter, it's really nice. Running is so much easier. It's so much easier
Oh,
in the
yeah.
winter. So, yeah.
Well, and even just from an equipment standpoint, right? I mean, let alone, it's so much easier just to lace up some shoes and put some warm clothes on and go.
Yeah. And far less warm clothes than when you're riding.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
when you're just
Exactly.
sitting on a bike, it's so hard to
Yeah.
stay warm.
For sure.
So
Celine,
true.
have you changed anything with your own training over the last couple of years, just based on whatever research or kind of experimenting with things, or are you training pretty similar?
The only thing that's really changed, adapted, I would say, is I do now strength train completely year round.
Nice.
I still would take maybe the summer or a month in the summer. I don't like being inside in the summertime, but it needs to be part of my practice year round. So I strength
Yeah.
train year round, and I am more dedicated to doing a mobility practice. That I do think, especially with running, I found that really does make a big difference with running.
Mhm.
So
Huge.
I
Huge.
make sure that I have a sort of dedicated mobility practice. And the way I do that, honestly, is I just found I have a tonal, and there
Mhm.
are some strength training for runners, strength training for cyclists, strength training for athletes programs where they build it right in. So if it's built in, I will do it. I don't have to
Yeah.
think. They just take me through like the control, the articular rotation, and that kind of stuff. Doesn't take much, but it makes a big difference.
I love that you referred to mobility practice instead of a workout, because I think a lot of
Oh,
people are
yeah.
very intimidated by mobility. One, they don't know, many people don't know what it is, but yeah, practicing, because that's what it is. We should be practicing mobility even daily, right? Just basic things. But I
100%.
love that. Yeah. Are there any adapting or adaptive things you've done on your nutrition, your daily nutrition in the past couple of years since we've last seen you?
I keep learning that I don't eat enough carbs
Okay.
is
Oh.
truly it.
How do you keep learning that?
Well, I did a full Eternal Health. I'm not sure if you know what Eternal Health is. It's the medical system for athletes is the best way to put it. And they have one in San Francisco and one in New York. And it's really, really interesting. Stacey Sims is involved. Lauren Fleischman's involved. A lot of former athletes are involved. And they put you through this whole screening. It's a blood test and these power tests and VO2 and lactate and mobility and on and on and on. And I've done this kind of rigorous testing a few times over my professional and athletic career. And when I was intentionally reducing carbs back in the day that we were all doing that because I want to be fat adapted athletes and go out and don't, that whole time, my blood sugar would be terrible. All of my panel would just look like a mess. And a lot of it came down to not fueling myself appropriately, not eating enough carbs. And this latest round, I met with my doctor and nutritionist. Like, are you eating enough carbs? And it's the same thing. My blood sugar will trend high. Things are just out of whack. And it's not intentional now. It's just because I tend to eat so much fiber. I have a hard time. Like, I don't get enough actual energy sometimes. Like, I have to be really careful.
Usable
about that.
carbohydrates. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you focusing on certain foods then, like to increase carbohydrates?
Like, honestly, just like more noodles. Like, I'm trying to eat, just try potatoes, something that is not just like tons of leafy greens or broccoli or all the things that are so fibrous.
Yeah.
Because I'll eat a ton of that.
The testing kind of, even though we don't always have the disposable income to do the testing, but can highlight these things that are unique to each of us. I forget, do they include genetic testing, or is that a different, it's not part
They
of
do
their
not.
service?
I have had that done as well.
Okay.
But I've had so many of these things done over the years, like writing about them and as an athlete. But
Selene, well, I'll order you a pasta lunch today here while you can have a little recovery meal after this episode. Thank you for sharing a little bit of personal update there. We've been wanting to have you back on the show for much longer than the duration of time here has been a lot longer than what we had hoped. With the work you do on your amazing podcast, Hit Play Not Pause, and the other science writing you do, and your involvement in co-authoring some fantastic resources as well. I think since we last met, it feels like some things have changed in the space of women's specific nutrition and fitness recommendations. It feels like there's a lot of noise and confusion, and women are actually either being dismissed or discounted, or they're just simply confused because we have leaders in the space that might be medical doctors, PhD researchers, really want women to thrive, but we have some butting heads on what women, air quote, need or should do. I guess first question here is, like, how are you seeing the current pulse on women's specific guidance? What is your take on what's happening in this space?
Well, I mean, I think it's not terribly surprising that you are seeing scientists internet fighting. It's just not. It's not surprising. And part of that is, in my opinion, good news. Like, women are finally getting recognized as an important demographic. That's great. Finally getting recognized in all of the spaces, including masters athletes and menopause athletes and premenopause. It's just the visibility has really, really increased. And we are also recognized as consumers. So you're going to have, we're just a bigger target market now, and in every sense of that word. And scientists, I have been a health and science reporter since 1992. And scientists have fought always about, they're still fighting. Should we eat meat? Should we not eat meat? What causes weight gain? What causes weight loss? I mean, people, that's just the nature of it, right? And I think that social media makes it worse because it is polarizing. So when I talk to people, and I talk to a lot of people on on all parts of this spectrum, and they actually generally aren't all that far apart from each other. In real application, they're actually not. But the algorithm does what it does, and it does pull people into tribes. And when you pull back, it's actually kind of fascinating to watch. But I've had a lot of the people on my show who don't necessarily agree with each other, but they say a lot of the fundamentals they say are pretty much the same. So I try to not get too wrapped up in the noise of it all, because social media is just noisy, and it rewards noise. It rewards absolutes. You know, if you say something that is on any way, it rewards that. And I think that's in every single aspect of our lives right now. I see it in the menopause space when we're talking about hormones. My Lord, boy, do I see it when we're talking about hormones. And people are looking at the same body of research and drawing different conclusions. And like I said, that happens with everything. And I think that, like, again, the good news is that people are finally talking about, women.
That's a good point. I sometimes feel like I need to allocate another part-time job to go look at the research study that a PhD or a medical doctor is citing. But that, I imagine, is taking a big chunk of your time as well, kind of going through what does the body of research say about this particular topic.
And sometimes, I mean, I won't mention any specifics, but even just a scientific meeting that I was just at, somebody said something from the stage, and I don't think it was meant to be misguiding, but when I looked at the study, what was said on the stage didn't match what actually was said in the study. And that happens. Yeah. That happens too. And so I always go back now and just like double, triple check, because we're all human, and we're all, especially when you are just speaking and there's questions and answers and you're answering things, it's really easy, even in a very rigorous space, to not get everything 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Selene, let me ask you this question, because I'm sure a lot of our female listeners are asking or thinking the same thing. In the past couple of years since we last talked to you on our podcast, at least, are there specific areas? So, a couple of years ago, fasted workouts, how to train specifically for females, hormone replacement therapy, supplements, protein. Is there like one or two or three or however many that have really gotten your attention these past couple of years? Like, whoa, okay, that's kind of high on the priority list. Or are they all kind of about the same, or have they been the same in terms of what you've been seeing in the research and real life?
Such an interesting question. Only because I think some of these things take on a life of their own that is unnecessary. And I think fasted training is 100% one of those. Because I often, when people are really in the weeds with all of it, I pull back and I go, okay, what are we actually talking about here? And then we'll just look at I'll just widen the aperture and be like, what are we trying to solve for? Like, why do somebody want to do fasted workouts? It's usually about weight loss. What does the research say about that broadly? What do we know about fueling workouts broadly and how it helps performance broadly? I'll look at things like, in our space, all the people I know in my community who have suffered stress fractures and stuff from low energy availability. And I've had on a number of doctors who use fasting in their practice. They believe it is a very good tool, for especially metabolically challenged people. But they will I'll ask them specifically, and they'll say, well, it is a stress, and you don't necessarily want to layer it on the stress of training on top of the stress of perimenopause. We don't really do that because it's counterproductive. And then I put that all into my vat and think like, okay, so what's the take home for the women I'm serving is, you probably want something in your system before you do a serious workout. I mean, if you're just going out to walk the dog, okay, whatever. If you're just doing, it's not this, but it turns into this entrenched fight that I personally just go, I don't think we need to be battling this hard.
Yeah. So you think fasted training has kind of taken the lens, if you will, in at least social media right now as top priority, or not top priority, but top interest?
I don't know that it is. I actually don't know how many people are all that interested either.
Yeah.
I mean, when you say interest, I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
that's not what I hear. I hear some
Yeah.
people say, like, oh, if they're having some trouble, I'm like, well, try putting something in your system, and they do, and they're like, oh, that did feel better. I had some blood sugar, my blood sugar was higher, and my mood was better. I performed better. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
I think what people are interested in is not always what is getting all of the big attention. I guess that's how I'm feeling.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and Dina's been alluding to all the noise out there, right? How do you filter through the noise? So when you deliver the messaging to your individuals, to your communities, to your podcast, like, are there certain things that you do that our listeners can benefit from in terms of how to filter through some of this noise? Or is it just listening to
I mean, I have my
us experts?
practice, which I just described in the case of safe fasting.
Right. Yeah. Kind of stepping back
and trying to, I always tell people, if what you're doing is working, it's working. Like, you don't need to arbitrarily change things. And also to keep in mind who somebody is talking to, whether it is in a post or whether it's in a podcast or whether it is, because most content is not necessarily directed to somebody who is training for a 70.3 or who is running ultras, right? Like, so I think it's always important to sort of sit back and realize that you are a bit of an outlier in the general population, and just check that whoever's talking understands you and is talking to you with their message. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it's tough sometimes, especially for consumers and even us, because there are so many people with their own thoughts, right? Of course. And as you said, even like we could all read the same study, but we come out with our own conclusions and our own real life applications. Same study, right? But it's just 100%. Kind of how, exactly.
It happens all the time. I think Simon Hill on The Proof had like a 4-hour podcast about carnivore diet or something. It was fascinating. So
right. Yeah. Okay. Well, let me shift, because this has kind of been a movement also, right? Menstrual cycle specific performance, right? The whole train according to your cycle. So a couple of years ago, that was a big movement. There's been some recent, meta-analysis that say maybe there's not as much clout to that. Maybe there's not a lot of difference there. So what's your take on females training according to their specific menstrual cycle phase?
That took on a life of its own for a while, and that was never, like, strict cycle syncing was not ever really part of the plan. I don't think, even when talking about menstrual cycles effect, it was more understanding the potential effects that each phase of the menstrual cycle could have. And, since like 10 years ago when that conversation got started, there has been a lot of more looks at that. Researchers have gone into that and have seen that there's more individual variability within a group of women, and even within a woman herself, that it's hard to make hard recommendations to say, like, this part of your phase is always going to be this, or this part of your phase is always going to be that, even though there's some directional trends, right? PMS is a thing for a lot of women going into that phase. You tend to see some of those shifts biologically. How meaningful they are, it's really hard to tease that out. But I was at the Female Athlete Conference earlier this year, and Anthony Hackney was there and delivered what I thought was a really great address on all of this. And he showed some of that meta-analysis data. Some people use that and say, look, there's nothing. And he's like, that's actually not what this is saying. It's saying that there's tremendous variability, but that doesn't mean there's nothing for a lot of women. There is. It's just a matter of, he said, maybe we're looking at this the wrong way, trying to do it with the same scientific lens that we always have, using this traditional group analysis, right? As opposed to really honing in on individuals, because athletes are telling us, Olympic athletes are telling us, like, can we figure this out? My cycle is affecting me. I mean, we have to also listen to women. This didn't come out of nowhere. So it's a matter of really honing in and understanding yourself and understanding, like, what the physiology is there, and then how you can work with your own physiology. That's always been in my mind the message. It's not like it's not about everybody needs to train this way in the follicular phase and this way in the luteal phase and this way. That's not the point. That said, I've seen it popping up like that on some big women's sites, and I'm not sure where that's coming from right
Yeah.
now. I don't know why it's having this odd resurgence, but it's definitely having this odd resurgence. And the last thing I'll say about it that I do think is a little interesting is that I have talked to people who have, and they're not people who are training for specific sports, but just people who like to exercise and want to feel the benefits of exercise. And they'll be like, oh, I started cycle syncing and I feel great. And I think what they're experiencing is periodization because they've never actually changed their training. So now they're just periodizing.
Right.
Now they're spending sometimes going really hard and sometimes going easy and working on mobility. And they're seeing benefits because they're just layered on some structure. There's a lot going on here.
I feel like a few of the things you've been saying, Selene, will apply to some other questions here, thoughts, or just discussion areas, like even nutritionally. It's similar in the sense that we have this message like women need completely different nutrition and athletic women. I mean, this is the point, like we have to personalize and individualize. What are we talking about and what are we trying to achieve? But these camps where it feels so black and white, like women don't need to do anything differently nutritionally than men.
But I think you need to, and I understand the pushback. I do. I also fear the pushback will set women back because, I just went to the Menopause Society meeting and it's so clear the sex differences there have dire consequences. Like not understanding all of the cardiologists got up there. Like we need to stop just mixing male and female data because women are not getting treatment they should because male data shows that it doesn't work and it does for women and they're getting treatment that they shouldn't because of the opposite. Yes. And I've heard over and over that the only thing women do better as far as cardiovascular health is die than men because of this. So we cannot go so far as to deny that there are important male and female physiological differences, that we have unique physiology, hormonal landscapes. We can get pregnant. We go through perimenopause. We go through menopause. We have a menstrual cycle. There are just these biological facts. Now, that I don't think that means we need big blanket women-specific recommendations for nutrition or training. What I think, and I just keep saying the same thing, is important is that we understand that female physiology and you work with someone who understands it. That way, if you do have bloating and fatigue at a certain phase, you've been tracking, you're like, I always get this bloating and fatigue. You have someone who can guide you. And when you hit perimenopause, you have somebody who understands the underlying underpinnings of that, like what's happening, and can guide you. And if you're slipping into LEA, you have someone who can recognize that. And you have someone who understands that as a female, you do have different iron and bone health needs than some of your, and body composition parameters than a male athlete. I 100% believe that's very important.
You mentioned perimenopause, and I know it's such a it's such a challenge for females, right? Because it can take so long. It could span a decade for these females. Very frustrating. Symptoms are unpredictable, obviously. How would you recommend females who are in perimenopause think about their training, think about their nutrition, especially when hormones are fluctuating so much and they're so unpredictable?
Yeah, that's a hard question. And perimenopause is definitely on the frontier in research, in female health research right now. The Menopause Society meeting was pretty much very focused on perimenopause because it's a real pivotal span in women's health. Her cardiovascular disease rises, lots of metabolic changes, brain health changes, as well as her athletic life. So honestly, I'm going to just say at this point, I think the first step is addressing any symptomology that you feel and understanding that it can start earlier than you think. And it shows up in mood changes, loss of motivation, anger, fatigue, all these things, anxiety. Like just knowing that and recognizing and finding a menopause-informed practitioner who can work with you early, I think can make a big difference in all of that. So all the fundamentals matter that we talk about: eating enough, getting your protein, getting your like all of that stuff is very important, prioritizing your sleep. But if you have this hormonal chaos that is making everything harder, it's going to be difficult to nail those fundamentals, and sometimes they're just not enough.
Along those lines is for those women who are on social media and maybe they do follow some, let's say, menopause focused or menopause certified practitioners or doctors, is really advocating for yourself. I know that's something that you know, have that strong messaging in your podcast as well. It's like, you don't have to settle for that first doctor who brushes you off. And like,
100%.
you don't have an issue here. Just give it time, or you're just getting old. And like really knowing that we deserve healthcare that, for one, listens and hears what we're each dealing with. But that can be hard when we're on a social and we're hearing, maybe we just follow one doctor who's like HRT for everybody, or it's for no one, or just, again, these polarizing or black and white messages. I don't know if you have a tip or two that you haven't already stated about those who are just so feeling overwhelmed. Like, I don't know where to go or what resource to follow that isn't just trying to make a buck off of me, or that can hear what I'm actually dealing with and find a solution or a treatment plan for me.
It is going to often take some trial and error there. You have to first and foremost trust in yourself and trust how you are feeling. Like, when you feel that something is not right and you are not yourself, it's true. Just trust that. Trust what you're experiencing. And then there are definitely resources that you can go to find. And again, you might need a little trial and error because you want to click with that doctor, right? And you want to have that relationship, because hopefully you'll be working with them throughout this whole transition and maybe beyond. But menopause.org has a practitioner finder, so you can find somebody who has gone to the lengths to be certified in menopause care. That's a place you can start. And there's a million online options now that they are menopause focused, that you can go there. There's something like an Eternal that works with athletic women. It's just a matter of putting your boots on the ground. But I do think that the first thing you need to do is trust yourself and trust, like, okay, these are the things I'm feeling. What are the big things? And just get clear with yourself is the biggest advice that I would have. Is, what would you like to accomplish? You are feeling what? What is the number one thing that is on your mind right now that is sort of, making you feel off kilter? And then address, like, making a list of the things that you want to address, and then going in and finding a provider and talking to them. And if they brush you off or you don't feel heard, don't waste time. Just go to the next, and it's a bummer that it has to be that way and that we have to advocate so hard. I mean, sometimes people get lucky and they find someone out of the gate, but it is worth that bit of an effort to sit down, take some stock, know what's going on with you. And then, there's plenty of great resources. I mean, menopause.org has plenty of, this is what symptoms, we have a symptom tracker at Feisty Menopause, just to just get in touch with yourself and have a little bit of a plan going into it, and then work on finding that provider. And as soon as you find someone you can work with, it should get easier.
Should, yeah. I also, your podcast, Selene, I mean, the various practitioners you've had on as well, addressing things that some of us didn't even know about, like the recent episode on fibroids, I thought was so amazing too,
Wow.
right? Because
Boy, I learned a lot too.
oh my gosh. And so that can just clue you in, or the woman into, like, oh, this is a thing. Can look into this and kind of get that
right. Maybe
armor.
this terrible pain and all this bleeding is a problem.
Right. I love what
Dina,
you're saying.
can we put all these resources in the show notes for our listeners?
For
Because these
sure.
are amazing that Selene's bringing up.
Yeah. I wonder too, Selene, since you were at the Menopause Society annual meeting, were there a couple other takeaways? I mean, there's probably a million, but
Well, no,
just
I
for our
mean,
conversation.
the biggest one, and I think that this needs to be more widely recognized and more broadly heard, because culturally and medically and societally, for so long, it hasn't. We have always, Google menopause woman images and you'll get 500 images of women with fans, right? You'll get like a woman with a fan. That is your menopause image. And that, I have come to believe, I used to think it's funny, and now I've come to understand it's unacceptable, because there is a very clear recognition that vasomotor symptoms, that's hot flashes and night sweats, are damaging occurrences in a female physiology and female life. Like when you have a hot flash, things are happening and they're not good. And they are linked to white matter hyperintensities in the brain. That's vascular damage in the brain. They're linked to increased risk of cardiovascular disease. They have a very strong link to disease processes down the road. So, and even that word moderate, if you like as athletes, we hear moderate, we're like, oh, that doesn't sound bad. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, why do I need help from a moderate hot flash? I think they need to change a lot of their language, honestly, coming out of these medical societies. Bothersom's another one. Don't use the word bothersome. That sounds like a fly at a picnic. It doesn't sound like something that could really lead to the disease down the road. So if you have hot flashes and night sweats, please, please, please get them addressed, because it's looking more and more like just taking care of the hot flashes, even if it's not. And that was one of the lectures we had this year. Even if you don't address them with hormones, just taking care of the hot flashes appears to have health benefits down the road. So however you do it, cognitive behavioral therapy, one of these new drugs, hormone therapy, whatever your tool of choice is, don't soldier it out. Don't just wear layers. Don't just buy a fan. Like take care of the root of them. It increasingly looks like that alone will benefit your health in some important ways.
Were there any presentations, Selene, on GLP-1s?
Yes, they lots of presentations. There's always lots of presentations on GLP-1s.
Yeah,
and we're all still learning, right? Like the big question was, as always, about muscle and bone health and loss, and those are certainly factors, and everybody's trying to figure out the extent of which and how important it is when you're talking about, especially when you're talking about people who are at a high risk because they have so much weight, right? That like there's different populations, I think, that we're talking about here. For some people, it's so important to get the body mass under control for metabolic reasons that you're just going to take what you have to take, and you should strength train and etc. But then there seems to be a lot of gray area, and they're still looking at that. Yes, there's muscle loss, but does the muscle that remains get healthier because it's got less fat infiltrating it? There was a whole discussion about that. Still trying to figure out what this means for bone health. Oh, there's no conclusions yet.
Conclusions,
No, there's no conclusions yet. They seem to work well hand in hand with hormone therapy. There's been a couple studies coming out on that hormone therapy, I don't know if it potentiates them, but somehow it does make them work better. I don't know as far as maintaining skeletal muscle mass, though, like what that combination looks like. But they're not going anywhere. That I can tell you. Like there's like a million in the pipeline, and there's people who think everyone in like all midlife women should be microdosing. I mean, that's a conversation that's happening because of the insulin resistance that creeps up and the metabolic shifts that happen. I have been at conferences, not the Menopause Society one, but I was at a longevity one for women in New York City a couple of weeks ago. And there was a very strong undercurrent there that, well, maybe everybody, when they check their menopause card, should start microdosing the GLP-1. Boy, oh boy, we're entering some new territory.
Yeah, you can literally get GLP-1 medications now at like Costco. I mean, it's almost scary because there isn't a lot of research that is conclusive, and I don't think there will be for quite some time. But it's interesting to me. It's just scary because I feel like a lot of people, females and males, will just be taking that into their own hands, literally, and dosing themselves without a lot of guidance, unfortunately.
Yeah, they did try to discourage against that, but then testosterone, boy, oh boy.
Yeah.
That New York Times piece on testosterone, I don't know if you saw it. That came out during the meeting, and that definitely caused a lot of conversation because that also is, we're entering a lot of data-free zones because there are a lot of women who are using borderline doses, if not just overtly high, higher physiological doses than are recommended. And I don't know.
I'm kind of setting you up for this one, and I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but in terms of just all this, like the medications and just talking about testosterone, GLP-1, everything, do you try to provide that messaging for females that, you know what, testing is a very important part of this. Like we talked a little bit about it in your testing and everything, but do you have those recommendations of doing some comprehensive blood work, hormone panels, like whatever it is?
I've always just said
try?
take stock. Like just take
Yeah.
stock before you dive into all of this. I do think the menopause transition is the perfect time to take stock. Take stock of your health, get your bones scanned. Like don't wait till you're 65, get a
Yeah.
DEXA, get your bones checked. Just take stock of yourself head to toe, get a blood
Yeah.
panel and see where you're at and what you need to address. And if you have symptoms, for sure, you should be addressing those symptoms however that looks. I do think more women could benefit from hormone therapy than are using it. I think that's true. But we're just in this place now where women are getting offered almost too much testing when you're talking about hormone levels and everything else that may or may not be telling them anything. It's
Can be overwhelming.
hard. Yeah, that 100% can be overwhelming. But
and
I
especially
do
if they don't have
think-
someone directing them, right? That to your point
Yes.
earlier, that's the key, right? Yeah.
Well, or making something out of nothing. Like what you were
True.
saying earlier, Selene, is like, well, what is it you're feeling? Like, don't compare to your male counterpart. And then don't maybe compare, I mean, having the conversations openly with your gal pals or whatever, like, what do you notice this or what have you tried learning from each other? But I think what you said earlier too is like your own systems check to see, you know, what is it you're feeling? What are your quality of life disruptors and things?
Yeah,
And
and how you
then-
feel. I mean, it's a clinical, even menopause is a clinical, menopause isn't a clinical diagnosis, but perimenopause is a clinical diagnosis, which is like, how you feeling? Do you have symptoms? And the levels, your hormone levels just don't tell that whole picture. They correspond very poorly with how you feel. So, you know, I am using estrogen myself and progesterone, but I'm using low dose hormone therapy myself. And my estrogen levels are not very high. They went from, I don't know, 15 to 30, which some people would still be like, that's low. But my hot flashes went away. And that's all I'm trying to accomplish here.
Yeah.
You know, why would I shoot for a level that, because when I tried something that I absorbed better, I was dizzy and kind of nauseous and I didn't like it. And I just don't, what's the point? But my point is for me to feel good and for my health to be solid. And those are things you can know. You can check that. You can see how you're doing.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, let me, Selene, if you don't mind me putting you on the hot seat, or let's just call it the warm seat, right? Because
Okay,
a lot
warm
of
seat.
warm seat. A lot of females obviously ask Dina and I this, probably ask you this too, but they're frustrated with their bodies, right? Throughout these transitions, right? It could be weight, it could be body composition, whatever. Do you have some weight/body composition tips for, you know, premenopausal, perimenopausal, you know what I mean? Are there specific tips you have for females in those different developmental stages, or is it just like a few that encompass all?
Yeah, I think the basic advice still holds. Body composition, your body is going to change. That is an inevitability for everybody when we go through this life in this mortal coil. Our body composition will not be the same at 30, at 50, at 70, at 80. That is just the facts. A little bit more body fat for everybody is natural getting older, and it's actually protective. It's having that reserve is a protective element. And it was interesting when I went through that eternal screen, my overall body fat is higher than it has been, than maybe 10 years ago. But my visceral fat was really quite low. And that's not the belly fat necessarily that is I can pinch, but it's the belly fat that matters, right? It's the belly fat that is around my organs. And as they explained to me, like that is a product of the resistance training and the endurance training and the lifestyle stuff. You still have quite a bit of agency over that. And I think the biggest tips, and that got driven home at the Menopause Society meeting too, is there are some big rocks that if you move definitely have a big trickle effect down onto the rest of your health. And sleep is really one of them. Like consistent sleep time, going to bed at the same time, getting up at the same time, has a pronounced effect on inflammation, has a pretty pronounced effect on your hormone regulation. Taking care of some of that, and that's what I was saying about before, is taking care of your symptoms, especially if they're disrupting your sleep. Sleep is such a cornerstone for all of that, and it's a big cornerstone for weight too. So I think don't just write off those kind of fundamentals, because they really do matter, and focusing on being strong, and your body composition includes muscle. So I always just like lift weights, get
Yeah.
sleep, eat. It's all the same stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would the sleep thing, Celine, would that be irrespective of what developmental stage that female is in, i.e., even premenopausal females?
Yeah, it just gets more important because
Gotcha.
you have, for the same reasons, with
Right.
a changing hormonal profile and with age, like all of that stuff becomes more, your body just has a harder time
Right.
regulating all that stuff, inflammation, all of that, right? So
Yep.
whatever you can do to help it, but definitely it was pretty pronounced, just the working with your circadian rhythms and having that stable sleep schedule and meal timing. And that's one of the it's one of the things, like we talked about fasting earlier. One of the things that I have always said is that, okay, I understand that you're trying to restrict your eating and you're trying to do this thing, but please just try to shift it earlier. There's so much evidence out there that starting your eating earlier and then stopping earlier is so much better for you than delaying, not eating breakfast till noon or something and then having this later window. It's out of sync with your circadian rhythms, and there's just more and more evidence that matters.
It's funny you mentioned that, because my wife has been going through that lately, and her, even without thinking about it, she has actually shifted to that type of eating schedule, and literally will eat like her last meal at 4 o'clock, kind of a thing, whatever it is, right? Super early.
The early
And
bird
feels,
special.
yeah, right. Feels super good too. And on days or nights when she does have something a little bit later, she doesn't feel as good. So obviously there's something to that, especially with the circadian rhythm.
Yeah, no, the circadian rhythms they matter,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you can work with them.
Oh, Celine, I feel like we could chat with you for hours more. You're such a wealth of knowledge, and your perspectives are super refreshing. And you've made so many good points, that some of which are so validating, I think, like not to forget about some of the fundamentals, and we're all individuals. We may have different physiology, but listening to ourselves, advocating for ourselves, and some of these things that I think just get lost these days. So I just want to thank you for that. I don't know if you remember this from last time, Celine, because it was over 2 years ago, but we ended our podcast with doing a 5-question, we call it high five.
Okay, I don't remember, but I'm up for it.
I can't believe you don't remember from 2 years ago. Just
Right?
kidding.
I answer
But-
many questions.
I know. So if you have a few more minutes, we'd love
Sure.
to do a new round of high
All right,
five.
let's do a high five.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm going to kick it off because you do travel a lot. I was wondering, what is one thing you always take with you when you're traveling?
I always take my running shoes when I'm traveling.
Uh-huh.
Easy peasy. Okay. Number 2, you mentioned mobility practice. So we would like to know, what's your favorite top-notch mobility exercise?
I really like cars, those controlled,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm going to say it right because I always just call them cars, but it's the controlled articulated rotation, whatever it's called. Look it up. I think it's simple and effective, and I am all about simple and effective. So that is the one that I have stuck with.
Love it.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
Celine, what is a favorite ethnic cuisine?
Ooh, I like all kinds of food, but I like spicy food, so I tend towards Asian, like Thai food is always a favorite. So I'm going to go with Thai.
Nice.
Okay. Number 4, if you were to binge watch a sport, what would that sport be?
I don't even know why I'm hesitant. I'm a big Eagles fan. Go Birds! So
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
I do
Okay.
like football. I know that's not necessarily the answer people always want to hear, but I grew up watching football with my grandfather, and it has
Yeah.
a soft spot in my heart. And I know it's problematic, but go Birds anyway.
Nice.
Love it. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and it goes with your theme of loving bird watching. So
Yes.
I mean,
Thank
kind of
you.
goes together. The last question is similar to one we asked last time, but I'm just going to change the wording a little bit. If you had one piece of advice for all the women athletes out there, what would that piece of advice be?
I would say it would be, and maybe I said this last time, I don't remember, but I always tell people to live forward and look forward instead of looking over their shoulders at where they were or what they used to be. Because there's so much, no matter where you are in your athletic life or in your life, there's so much ahead of you that you have not tried or haven't done or haven't experienced. And even within your own sport, there are ways that you can express yourself within that sport, whether it's like I got into bike packing when I didn't want to chase podiums, and it was amazing. It was still hard and challenging, and I had to train and use my brain, but it was just rewarding in different ways. And I think that we cut ourselves short when we spend so much time thinking about all the things that we can't do, or we're never going to be as fast as we were in 2014 or whatever. It's like, okay, but you were there. You were there. You did that. That was awesome. What's next? I mean, there's so much ahead of you.
I love it so much. And want to say it times 1,000.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for everything today. We'll be sure to put all the links to your podcast, all the resources that you have. And we can't wait to continue to follow you and all of your endeavors.
Thanks so much. I appreciate you both.
Thank you, Selene.